This is Matthew Kratter from Trade University, and today I want to talk about Bitcoin and the energy morality police. Here's the typical critique that we often hear. We hear that Bitcoin uses too much energy, and the typical Bitcoiner or Bitcoin miner response is, don't worry, we're using this mix of renewables, blah, blah, blah. Here's another response that we could try though. Go fork yourself. I paid for this electricity, and I'm going to use it for whatever I want to. And this is what I'm going to argue in this video. Since when did people or the government get the right to tell anyone else what's a good use of electricity or a bad use of electricity? So for example, is watching mainstream media, TV propaganda a good use of electricity? I'm talking about both the left and the right. How much energy is wasted putting out this propaganda, heating the studios, all of the bright studio lights, all of those people driving to work? Is TikTok a good use of electricity? Is Twitter a good use of electricity? Is extracting toxic inflammatory seed oils and putting that in all of Americans' food, is that a good use of electricity? How about pornography? Is that a good use of electricity? Because as I've argued in a previous video, internet porn uses approximately 3.5% of global electricity when you do the calculation, because we know that the internet itself uses 10% of global electricity. Now, Bitcoin, by contrast, uses something like 0.15%, so less than a percentage point. I talk more about that in this video, which I'll link to in the description notes below. But I think it's unfair. Why is it only Bitcoin's energy usage that gets singled out, even when Bitcoin uses renewable energy? So when Bitcoin uses Texas renewable energy, it's considered a bad thing. And people, you always see these articles, why are Bitcoin miners driving up the price of energy for everyone else and consumers in Texas, which is patently not true, of course, because they're using a lot of stranded energy that would otherwise not be used by the grid. But how about when Google does it, it's praiseworthy. This is the great contradiction. So here's an article from just a couple days ago, Google grabbing 1 gigawatt of clean energy for Texas data centers, and we're not hearing anyone arguing that this is driving up energy prices for consumers. And these Google data centers are probably mostly being used for porn and cat videos anyway. So I would ask, why is Senator Elizabeth Warren not launching an investigation about this as well? If you're enjoying this content so far, I just ask you to hit that subscribe and like button. So here's an article about Warren attacking Bitcoin mining in the US. Over the years, Senator Warren has actually been a strong critic of the US banking system and the Fed. So it's really a tragedy, in fact, that she hasn't put in the time to understand how Bitcoin fixes these things. If you don't like US banks, if you don't like the Fed, you really should at least take a look at Bitcoin. And we can see here that Senator Warren, as recently as this August, blasted the Federal Reserve's culture of corruption and called the Inspector General's review of it a fake review. If we take a look at Bitcoin, energy consumption and electricity consumption uses approximately 0.45% of global electricity, according to this estimate, and then 0.15% of global energy that's produced. So these are very, very small numbers, and in many cases, these Bitcoin miners are using flared gas that's being burnt. They're using stranded energy that would otherwise be wasted. If we take a look at Bitcoin's energy usage in the context of other industries, we can see BTC right here. We can see air conditioners, lighting, TVs, etc. And all of these are really necessary to modern civilization. You could try to argue that we're keeping our lights on too much, or we're using too much cement or something, but it's very, very unusual, and I think it's unfair to take one of these industries and just say we should totally eliminate it, as they want to do with BTC, especially when it's one of the smaller circles. Who gets to decide what's a moral use of energy? For example, is it okay for rich politicians to use lots of energy, but it's just not okay when ordinary people do it? If so, why is that? Here, for example, is the Obama's Martha's Vineyard estate, and they applied for a 2,500 gallon propane tank. And there's a lot of controversy around this, but either way, here's a building that uses quite a bit of energy. I don't think there are very many people living in this building. Why do these people get to criticize people who want to drive a pickup truck, for example, or use energy in some other way? There really is a class distinction there. And then there are the academics who write endless screeds against Bitcoin And ironically, and they're so unself-aware that they don't see the irony of this, they write these screeds, these essays, these articles from the comfort of their well-heated or air-conditioned offices. And you never hear them arguing, maybe we shouldn't build such large universities in places that have such large temperature swings, such hot summers, and such cold winters as places like Manhattan. And you'll see why I'm singling out Manhattan in a minute. Maybe these academics shouldn't spend so much time burning electricity with their laptops and wasting so much heat energy with their coffee, which itself has to be flown on jets from Central and South America and from Southeast Asia. Here, for example, the reason I'm signaling out Manhattan, we're talking about someone from the Columbia Climate School, a guy named Jeremy Hinsdale here, who wrote an article about how dirty Bitcoin mining is, and he tries to loop in everything else. Let's talk instead about Columbia University's dirty little secret. Instead of talking about cryptocurrency's dirty little secret, here's the dirty little secret. Why does Columbia University have both a climate school and an Earth Institute? This doesn't make sense to me. That's a lot of buildings to heat. It's a lot of asphalt and cement. Why not convert one of them into a nice garden or a nice pine forest if you're really worried about the Earth? So, for example, the Columbia Climate School was established in 2020, and the Earth Institute has already been existing on the Cambridge campus since 1995. So this seems to me like a bad use of energy and a bad use of electricity, as long as we're going to poke our nose into other people's business and tell them what they can do with their electricity or what they can do with their energy. Here's another appalling example from the Columbia Climate School participating in a conference in Egypt. You can see even with this picture, all these lights, all this electricity that's been using, and they're flying all these people to Egypt to discuss global climate action. Why does Columbia have to fly so many people on jets to Egypt to discuss the climate? Why not just use Zoom instead? But before they use Zoom, they probably should also investigate the carbon footprint of Zoom and the electricity usage of Zoom. Why does Zoom have so many offices? Shouldn't Senator Warren be investigating them as well? Or shouldn't the Columbia Climate School be writing articles about this as well, instead of promoting pictures where people are clearly burning lots of electricity in a really superfluous manner? We can see here all the offices that Zoom has. What gives them this right to use all this electricity just so people can talk to each other globally? We should probably go back to carrier pigeons or something like that instead. Be better for the environment. So final conclusions, we need to stop judging how other people use electricity. I personally don't care how the Columbia Climate School uses electricity. It's not a place I'd want to spend any time, but they're welcome to do it as long as they pay for it, as long as they don't criticize Bitcoin's energy usage in the same moment. It's really no one's business what someone else does with their electricity, unless they're using it to electrocute small, cute kittens or puppies or something like that, I suppose. If someone is paying for electricity, they must be deriving some benefit from it. Otherwise, they would not be purchasing it. Bitcoin gives us a new, global, fair, permissionless, neutral money. And I personally believe that it's well worth that tiny amount of electricity that it uses. And a lot of people are beginning to agree with this. Bitcoin uses far less energy than World Financial District skyscrapers and far less energy than the U.S. military, which is used to enforce the current global reserve currency, U.S. dollar reserve status. Bitcoin also uses far less energy than any of our parasitical elites who preach poverty for thee, but luxury for me. And we can see this example of Elizabeth Warren when she sees the cameras as she's getting off of her private jet, hiding behind some of her assistants. So this really is the hypocrisy of our elites, and they never turn that lens of criticism around on themselves. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.